Gavin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing awesome. How are you, Eric?
Good to have you back.
Thanks, man.
I don't know if you've been keeping up with the interviews, but it's gone crazy since last time you were here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and you came on my show, too, which was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, to hear your full story and how everything progressed and all that. It's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's still going. We're still kind of writing that story, right? You and I both.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is why we're here, because I want to hear about what's going on with you.
Oh, man, too much to handle, but it's all good. We're doing a lot of cool stuff.
So, you're building rifles now? What's going on there? Talk to me.
Yeah. So about a year ago, we got our shop space, and we've been just going through all the steps to get our license, to get our SOT, to get security, surveillance, getting my smaller machine shop equipment down here. I have the mountain shop where I do most of my filming, and then, down here we've got a 1440 and a smaller mill and, a barrel vise, and we're putting together everything we need to do gunsmithing for the general public, which we're doing under the name Precision Rifle Concepts. And we will be building complete rifles that are like what you see on the channel, that are like signature rifles, and those are ultimate reloader rifles.
Okay.
So we've started doing some gunsmithing. I've got parts for 4 complete rifle builds that are going to be, bat TR actions, foundation stocks, Bartline barrel blanks, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 223 trainers, and we're going to do 2 6.5 Creedmoor NRL Hunter PRS type rigs with those. So, but I'm still waiting on my CO2 laser for cutting custom foam, because what we want to do is when you open the case, it's like a total experience.
Oh.
We want people to be completely blown away. Everything's in the perfect spot, premium experience kind of deal. That's
going to be good for unboxing. That's going to make some really good unboxing videos.
Yes, and we hope people that will do that and share that online, when they get these rifles and whatnot.
Now, I don't know if you saw my George Gardner interview, but he has. Are you going to have a guarantee, some kind of a guarantee, or are you going to send targets with these rifles? What's the protocol?
I'm planning to send targets, and what we're going to do is take the loads that have done really, really well on the channel. So like on the 6.5 Creedmoor Burger 140 hybrid, and on the 223 trainer, the Burger 77 OTM tactical. I mean, we've gotten just laser precision, results. So for this first batch of 4, I'm planning to shoot some 5-shot strings while we're doing some very simple break-in. And since we have those good loads to work with, that means the customer should be able to take, even Burger's factory 77 OTM load shot amazing out of our 223 trainer. We're talking like down into the 1s in some cases.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I think everybody should have a 223 trainer. I think they're just so fun, and a great way to work on fundamental shooting skills without all the recoil. You could be in the TAC class in a PRS competition. Great for varmint hunting. Lots of components, lots of load data. It's just a heck of a lot of fun.
So let's say I get a 223 from you, right? And you build the rifle, you send the targets. Do you also send the load data? Are they going to be allowed to buy ammo from you? Talk to me about the full process.
Yeah, I'd like to offer all of that. So I am planning to include load data, because we replicated the 77 OTM load on our channel. We have a whole story about that. So it's not secret or anything like that. And what we want to do is have people equipped for success. Eventually, I want to have the capability to offer custom dies if they're more along the lines of the bench rest mindset, in terms of the customer wanting to load and have super precision or something custom. If they have custom freebore, or they have custom neck diameter for neck turning and things like that, to work into that space. But what we're doing is we're rolling things out incrementally. Like if we feel like we can do something really well, we're going to offer it. On the gunsmithing side, that's like muzzle threading, special sporter muzzle threading, where we have a little shoulder that we screw right on and glue in place and face, chambering, and then as we I'm still working on my bedding technique, for instance, so we're not doing that for customers yet. But I'm experimenting with DevCon steel putty. I was using DevCon, the F2 aluminum, and it's a little runny for my liking.
Yeah, you got to do the steel putty. Have you tried Marine Techs?
Yes, I have done Marine Techs. I'm trying to remember which rifle that was. Is that? Are you a fan of the Marine Techs?
I am now. I used to do DevCon on everything, and after I been hanging out with Speedy for a while. He's a Marine Techs guy, and then he'll give me all the data about all the shrinkage, and they tested it, and it's all about it's not so much what it looks like now or how easy or hard it is to work with now as compared to the long term results that you get. And he's apparently they tested this thing somehow. I forget how he told me they put it in a lab and they took it through hot and heat cycles or something along those lines, and the Marine Techs had the lowest shrinkage of them all.
Well, I'll have to come back to that and do some more testing. To me, it's all about doing a really, really good quality job, that's going to have the right result and the right fit, and then not making a complete mess, right? Something where you've got to come in afterwards on the mill. I always put it on the milling machine and, do a little trimming here and there to just tidy things up and whatnot. But hopefully it's a little bit of tidying up and not like, oh, okay, we've got to, go into the mag well and completely clean these big drips out and stuff like that. So I'm still, like I said, experimenting with getting to that point where I'm like, yes, I want to do this for other people. Right now it's I can get a good result, but I'm still fine tuning,
Yeah, and that's, if that's what it's all about. You're going to at some point end up with your process that works for you, just like anything else. And it's going to probably be your signature work. You know what I mean? It's like some of these guys, when they see somebody's work, they can tell who did it. They see a rifle like, oh, so-and-so did this. And hopefully it's a good thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm wanting to see more shop tour type stuff with different people, including yourself. I'd like to go see Speedy. I'd like to do a chambering with Dave Manson. I'd like to go over and see Jim Borden's routine. He's, like we said when I was interviewing you, we talked a little bit about this, how it's like, people do things differently. And ultimately, my goal is to refine my system so that I really like it for what I do. And when I hire a gunsmith, that these are the processes and systems and all this that we can use. But then also I can make that available to other people by either watching my channel or with training events. I'm not totally sure the complete extent of what this will look like, but I do want to probably publish a book on some of this stuff, precision rifle machining handbook kind of a thing, and start with volume 1 and do manual machining, and then do volume 2 with CNC when I get to that point. But I've spent so much time talking with people about even things like which tool holder are you using, which coatings and which specific insert geometry, and speeds and feeds. And then I've got some tables that I'm working on which are pretty cool around just some machining parameters for all of the popular muzzle threads and barrel shanks and things like that. And so I'm definitely a nerding out on the systems kind of a person. And so I don't know exactly where it'll go, but hope to formalize and document a lot of that so people could just kind of take it and run with it, kind of a thing.
Well, that's going to be very helpful. There's I think as the knowledge grows, so does the confidence for someone to say, I think I can do this myself, And I think it's all about confidence and having the available data, knowledge that you're willing to provide, and somebody can just say, this is, look at NYC CNC. You know who that is? Anyway, he started in his apartment. John Saunders. He started in his apartment with a small tabletop mill in New York City in an apartment. Okay?
Nice.
Now he has a shop. I don't know how many thousands of square feet his shop is now. He has over 10 machines, maybe 20, tons of machines. And now he offers CNC training and all kinds of, if you want to learn how to run CNCs, you can look him up. You can go take his classes, and he'll get you up and going.
Yeah, and I can't say how important that those kinds of resources are, because for me it was Gordy Gritters. I got his DVD that he did with Grizzly, and I thought, oh, this is amazing. I've looked for this information everywhere, and at the time it was like I couldn't find it.
Right.
And
right.
At that point I thought maybe one day I'll meet him, and then he becomes my mentor, and then now we're working together formally on stuff, and he saved me so much. I'm probably like Speedy for you,
Yeah.
Saved me so much wandering in the desert.
I've taught him so much.
Nice. Yeah. So and then more recently working with Bruce Tom and Daryl Tom, and seeing different philosophies,
right,
and different approaches, different equipment, different everything, and each of these people make it work for them. And they get to what I would say is generally an equivalent result. So,
did you see my video that I sent you, chambering a barrel in my?
I did, with some on a CNC machine with some water-based lubricant. It looked like.
Yep. Well,
coolant?
that's the coolant that we use, and that thing it worked way better than I expected.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that setup, because I'm not yet a CNC guy.
So you were talking about how people talk about holders and how to hold and the best holder and all that stuff. So let's go through the basics, right? The barrel needs to be straight, indicated through the bore coaxially, right?
Yep.
That's one. So I was like, okay, I need to handle that side. So this lathe is massive. The spindle is probably like 4.5 feet, right? So there's no way.
Oh, wow.
There's no way I'm gonna be able to put a spider on the backside, right? Well, they make the true bore. They make the true bore chuck, right? And I'm like, well, I can use a true bore. So I bought a true bore, and but then I have collet chucks on my machine, and I didn't want to remove that collet chuck. And, because you can't do that. You can remove the collet chuck and install the true bore right on there. I don't want to do that. And this machine is massive. The machine weighs 50,000 pounds.
Holy moly.
It's a big machine, right? And I thought, you know what? I don't need to do any of that. So what I did is I made a back plate with a 3-inch stub out the back. And I put a 3-inch collet, and I just stick it in there.
Dang.
Right? So
I like the way you think.
So when I said, you know what, well, let's just make a back plate. And guess what? We made the back plate ourselves because we have the machine to do it, right?
Right.
So now when we want to chamber a barrel, we stuck a bar, like a 24-inch bar through the chuck, clamp it. So you grab it on both sides, you go and you stick it in it's got a 3-inch hole, right? The collet. Yep. You stick it in there, and then you just push it in, and then just hit the chuck. You close it, and now you have a true bore installed on your machine, right?
That is so cool. I do something sort of similar. I have a 5/8 24 barrel extension, because on my TL 1660, 26-inch spindle approximately, plus the T-bass plates, plus the chuck, right? The 6-jaw chuck. So at that point, it's the same problem. You're not going to get all the way through.
Right.
So I screw on this barrel extension. It's 5/8 24 female on one side and male on the other. And then on the outboard side, I can hold it so it doesn't flop around with the spider. Not, I'm indicating with the T-bass system. Well, and then I have a place to put my my muzzle flush.
So what we did, so now we have a very simple way to attach the chuck, right, to the machine. Like, it's on and off in seconds, right? Yeah. That's handled. And now it's like, well, we got to run coolant through it. Well, how do we do that, right? Well, to keep it from flopping around, we have spindle liners. It's this liner that goes in the spindle, right? And it's about 10 thousandths over the barrel diameter. So it ain't going to flop around. So that's handled, right? And, of course, it's indicated with a T-bass, so that's handled. And it's like, how do we get coolant to her? Well, it was very simple. My machinist says, well, we don't have to go to the barrel. We can flood the whole spindle bore. And it has a flange on the back. So we just made a plate for that flange. And I have a union, that rotary union, right? And we stuck it in there. And then we just put a plate in the back of the machine. So it floods the whole spindle bore. Okay.
That's really cool.
So that makes it super simple because you don't have to worry about attaching it to the barrel. It's literally, you can do a barrel, pull it out, do another one, and the coolant will come, right? Because it's coming through that bore. Okay, so then it's like, okay, how do we get coolant to there? So I had we had another machine that had a small pump and a tank. So it was we were just feeding coolant to the machine, and we were not circulating it back.
Gotcha.
And but then as we were doing that, I said, look, this machine has a wash down hose. So if you want to, you push a button and it feeds coolant to that wash down pump. So we put a quick connect on that thing. So when we're chambering barrels, we just turn on that coolant to go to that hose, and it feeds, and now it circulates. So it's all set up. That's that side. And it's like, okay, what about the reamer now? Because what I wanted, the main reason I wanted to do this is I wanted to spin the reamer one direction and the barrel the other direction. Like, it's called gun drilling. That's supposed to be the most perfect way to drill. That's how they drill barrels.
Interesting. Because
typically the way we do it, the reamer's here, and if it has a sharp edge on one side, you know, if
it does all the cutting.
Well, not only that, right? That's the path of least resistance. It's going to want to.
Yeah.
It's going to want
it a little bit.
Well, and it's probably going to cut it oversized, right? Because they're not all cutting at the same time. And then I thought, well, the best way would be to spin it and spin this one at the same time. How do we do that?
So how do you? I was just going to ask, when you're clamping your reamer in place, how do you indicate it so that it's?
That's the question, right? So this machine has a milling head, right? And it's a B-axis, so you can put it at any angle you want. And I thought, well, that should be perfectly centered, right? But the problem is getting a holder to hold the reamer, right? So we have shrink fit holders, and those are supposed to be some of the best. Well, the problem is the reamers are 7/16, and a shrink fit holder, for some reason, 7/16 is an oddball size in machining for holders. So my my tool vendor, he could source one, but they were like about $1,300 for one holder. And I said, well, if I'm going to have multiple reamers, I don't want to be having a. So I'm like, well, we're not going to do that, because even if we have it, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be perfectly concentric. So I thought, well, wait a minute. I said, I have another spindle back there, a sub spindle. Let's throw a 2-inch collet in there, and we'll just hold the JGS reamer holder back there.
Oh, gotcha.
And I thought that would work. And I said, wait a minute, I can't spin it because it's I was afraid that if I go to spinning it and that thing can move around. And I said, it needs to be
centrifugal force.
It needs to be rigid. It needs to be rigid. So we're coming up with all kinds of. I said, well, we can clamp a holder back there with a collet and put a reamer in there. And I said, yeah, but that still doesn't guarantee perfection, right? And then it hit me. Well, it's a sub spindle and it's a machine. It's a freaking complete machining center. So what I did is I wrote a program. So what I do is I throw in just a scrap piece of bar back there, stick it out 3 inches, and the machine will go and drill it and bore it to size while it's in the machine, and then it'll mill a flat, it'll drill and tap for the set screw.
Wow, nice.
Right, and we left it about half a thou oversized, over the reamer diameter, and because we have to make it every time, right? Once you're done and you take it out, you can't reuse it.
Right.
So I just wrote a program, and it takes all of like 5 minutes for this thing to do that, right? And now it's in the machine. It's made, and it's perfectly concentric.
Yep.
We threw the reamer in there. We threw an indicator on there, a 50 millionth indicator. There was just the slightest of wiggle, and I said, perfect. So that's how we held the reamer.
I've been doing something similar in the manual machining world, which is to take
you put on the other
taper
side.
number 4. Yeah, put my tooling in the spindle, machine it in place.
Yeah.
I made a 7/16, and then I made a 12 millimeter for my Treble German dies and stuff like that. And then if your tailstock is slightly high or low or whatever, doesn't matter. And since it indexes in place, it's pretty repeatable. So, yeah, rigid tool holding is great.
Yeah, so that's how I was able to get that reamer to be perfectly centered and rigid. And then, as you saw, I was spinning them in opposite directions.
Yep.
With coolant coming through, and I tell you what, that finish was incredible. We threw an indicator. I wrote a program. I threw an indicator in a collet chuck in the machine, and I just added as another tool, and it goes and grabs it, and it spins the chuck at 50 RPM, and it checks the back, checks the front. It's all
Very
part
nice.
of the. So what it does, it'll finish reaming, it'll send the reamer home, and then that will come in and check, make sure it looks everything. And it was not even the slightest wiggle on that indicator. It was perfect. I was so happy.
Yeah. Yep.
But again, like you just have to cover the basics. What are the basics? Well, the barrel needs to be concentric, the reamer needs to be concentric, and that's it. However you can achieve that.
But what's funny is it's funny how many gunsmiths don't do that. They will indicate to the OD of the barrel shank, or they'll indicate within 1,000th on the breech end and 1,000th on the muzzle end with it sticking through the spindle, and call that good enough. And as you know, you get in there with an indicator into the throat area of where that'll get cut, and you're not running true there. And to me, that's the foundation of what we offer in terms of chambering, is that laser focus, attention to detail, perfectly cut throats, so that your results are elevated, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. So what it does, if everything is perfect, right, and the rifle doesn't shoot, now you can blame something else.
Right.
That's, to me, that's how it's supposed to be done. Like, if one of my barrels doesn't shoot, for example, I have one right now that's one of those that I chambered. We took 2 of those barrels out. I did 5 of them since I had it set up. And I said, I'm just going to chamber all my barrels for the year. And I took 2 out this morning. And one of them shooting nice round groups. We're testing. But, I was getting, I think the biggest group I got at 1,000 yards was 4.5 inches. The smallest was 3. And this covered about 3 grains of powder. And the other one was about the 5-inch, 4 to 5, but it was double grouping. Like,
oh, okay, yeah.
It was, and I said, okay, something's going on here. So now I'm gonna have to see what's going on. But I can't blame the chamber, because I know it's perfect, as perfect as I can get it.
Yep. So that double grouping thing, I did watch your interview with Jack Neary, basically reading the target and looking at your groups and telling them, having them tell you. When you see that double grouping, where do you go with that?
Well, so this is back to knowing what's good and what's bad, in the sense of, is that base already covered? So Jack talking about double grouping and horizontal groups and flat groups and all that. His rifle is perfect. Like, it's been went through and it's been proven that everything's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right now, the rifle that I have, because this is a Magnum, I had to get a Magnum bolt, and I'm different dies, different everything. So
what cartridge?
This is that PRCW, that 6.5 PRC necked up to 7 millimeter.
Yep. We talked about that last time.
So this is a whole different thing for me, new. So I can't just say, well, it needs more powder, because that's kind of what Jack was saying. Well, add powder. I think he said add powder, but again, I was checking a 3 grain spread.
Right.
And the whole time it was double grouping. So adding powder didn't help it. You know what I mean? So something else is going on. Now, the other rifle, it was behaving properly.
Okay.
The groups were getting bigger, smaller, moving around on target, climbing as the charge was climbing. It was predictable. This one was doing everything it was supposed to be doing, except for it was double grouping.
Right.
And these are not huge groups, right? Like 5.5 inches, but still, you'd have 1, 2, 3 that were like in like 1.5 inches or 2, and then the other 2 would split, and just kept getting this double grouping throughout every charge. So it just tells me, typically, the first thing I look at is ignition. Just gonna go through that bolt, make sure everything's good. If everything's good, then I'm gonna check primers. Maybe change primers, just something minor. But the first thing I always look at is ignition.
Were you chronographing?
Oh yeah.
During that. So did you see anything on the chronograph that correlated those?
Now the one that was double grouping, the SDs were like 2 or 3. Like it was.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and it's, again, I don't know. I mean, the chronograph indicates that all the ignition is perfect, just because of the SDs were so low, and it may be that barrel is just not in a happy tune place, right? Because right now seating depth hasn't been done and tuner hasn't been dealt with, right?
Right.
So I'm still going to go through the bolt and everything just to make sure everything's good. I don't expect to find anything there just because of the chronograph. The chronograph looks so good throughout the whole range. So, it's just one of those things. How do you approach it? And, well, I'm going to, like Speedy said, assume everything's broken and just go through the whole thing. And but I'm thinking it's a harmonics thing. Just the only difference between the two is one's a 32-inch barrel, the other's a 30-inch, and that enough can make them act differently.
Yeah. Do you think the stock and the bedding is equivalent between the two rifles?
Yeah, I had Speedy do both. I don't do bedding. Okay. I know how to do it. Smart, I just don't do it.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I learned from Speedy. He taught me everything everything I know, not everything he knows, everything I know. And I'm like, yeah, thank you for that, but I'm gonna bring you my barrel or my actions every time they need to be bedded, because I don't like how messy it is. How I don't like how long it takes. It's like you're here and then it's like, okay, I got to come back in 6 or 8 hours or tomorrow. And it reminds me too much of pouring concrete, which I did for a very long time. You can't, for example, if you're, for example, let's say it's late in the evening, right? And you got to get this stock ready to bed. You can't just say, well, I'll just bed it in the morning, because you just lost 12 hours.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the part I hate.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, but it does make a difference. It's interesting. I've noticed some systems just don't seem to need it as bad. Like I have a Manners T2A gap that I built a 6-dasher on, and it was down in the zeros for a couple groups, and that's just straight up, V-block and mini chassis in there and screw it in and go. Also, the foundation stock seems to do really, really well without bedding. And then you get into other rifles. Obviously, if you've got an old-fashioned wood stock or something like that, you're going to want to bed it and all that. So what's your philosophy on that? Do you believe in always bedding?
Yes.
Usually bedding?
No.
Okay.
Well, back to what I said earlier. If you cover as many bases as possible, then there's just less chance for something to go wrong. That's just... My PRS rifles are bedded. I bedded those myself. They're chassis, right? It's like they were shooting just fine before, and they were shooting just about the same after. Nothing changed, but at least now it's like, at least now I know. If I start having issues, I don't have to worry about the bedding. As you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, I do. Yep. So we were just talking about you checking groups at 1,000 yards and going through that process and all that. One of the new things that I'm going to be doing shortly is an ELR rifle.
Ooh.
And I'm doing a 50 BMG build to start with, just because I've always wanted one. But the entire platform, BAT EX action, all that stuff will be, I'm thinking to go with like a 375 ShyTac as a follow-up to get serious with. And these things that we're talking about, like how do you approach evaluating a rifle, how do you get to the right load, seem to be much more important with an ELR rifle because it's so expensive and time consuming to do this stuff. You know, when people are talking about, what is it, up to $5+ per shot or whatever, you know, that's a whole different league.
I was talking to Chase Stroud. He shoots for Applied Ballistics, and oh man, he was telling me, he was literally blowing my mind as how much stuff goes into it, because you know these guys are shooting 2 miles and farther, right? And I asked him, like, how do you even attempt a 4,000-yard shot? Because
yeah.
Just whenever you get a chance, think about what it would take, right? You can say, well, number one, you have to verify the distance, because if you're off by 5 yards, that's massive at that distance, right?
When the bullet's going like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number one, how do you do that, right? Oh, just range it. Oh, really? What kind of range? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
What we take for granted as, you know, for example, I shoot 1,000 yards. Well, how? Oh, just take my rangefinder, right? And there it is. But when you get to 4,000, it's like, oh, just get a rangefinder. Well, you can't just get any rangefinder.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, that's number one. Number two, the target, I think he was saying 36 inch. One MOA is 40 inches. So it's not very big.
I know, that's,
well,
yeah.
But now
wow.
think about the reticle on the rangefinders, right? They're pretty big. So when you're seeing a target at 4,000 yards, even if you can't see the target, are you actually ranging the target, or are you ranging what's around it, right?
Right.
And another thing that he mentioned that I had never, ever thought about, he says, well, some of these rangefinders, they're not zeroed with the reticle. Like where the reticle is, that they actually shoot, you know, maybe slightly to the right, slightly to the left. And he goes, when you go that far out, now you can be way off. And so anyway, that's my point. When you get that far out, things that we say, oh, it's not that's hard. Well, it becomes very hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything gets more expensive and more elaborate. Different types of scope mounts and prisms and stuff.
Yeah, because you can't.
Yeah.
I asked him. I said, well, how many mils? And he gave me some crazy amount of mils, which the scope doesn't have, right?
Right.
So you need to get anyway. It gets very interesting real fast.
Yeah.
And very expensive. Yeah. Every time he said something, it just sounded like more money.
That's why I'm going to have the right people come over, like Emil Praslik, and help me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's who you need to talk to. Well, Emo and Chase, they shoot together.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, Paul Phillips, he's going to be on the show. Again, he's coming back. We're going to talk more ELR, but God, it's just so nuts, man. I mean, it's a fun sport. I can see it from afar that it looks really fun. I'm just going to let you guys go play.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So is that your plan to at some point offer ELR barrels? I'm wondering why you have such a big lathe, and it's starting to make sense.
I do want to be able to do those barrels, and whatever I do, I like to go through myself first. Maybe not with every particular chambering. You know, if someone wants me to chamber a 257 Weatherby Magnum and I don't have one, that's fine. You know, but to operate and to build that class of rifle, and then know what's going to work, make sure that if I have challenges, it's on my timeline, you know, and then when I get it figured out, offer it to other people. That's all good. And I think it depends on what the market looks like.
You probably heard, you mentioned what kind of actions are you planning to use?
I've got a BAT EX for that.
Well, I'm talking about for your builds. You have some builds.
Oh, we got BAT TRs for that, the tactical actions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you heard about Defiance? I've been watching a lot of memes on Instagram. I don't know
what's the latest.
Apparently they're 15 months out.
Okay.
And I think they increased the price by like $500. So
there's some crazy things happening. I was looking at tracks for my side-by-side to get up to our ridgeline range in the snow. and they went from like $4,800 to $6,200 at New Year's.
Wow.
I was like, it's too bad I didn't actually order those 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know? This economy we're in is just insane. I mean, people talk about 11% inflation in 1 year. That's not true out here. It's way more than that for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Way, way more than that. If you can even buy them.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like everything's went up, and I sat back and I thought about it. Like, do I really need to go up? And I said, we have very efficient machines, and we got another one that just increased efficiency. And I said, you know what, I'm just not gonna pass on the extra cost to the customer. I'm gonna pass on the efficiency gains that we have.
Nice.
That's
awesome.
So even when we released the brand new next generation tuner brakes, we may have one up like $5 or something. But now we're putting in instead of those screws that we used to do, now we put in a $10 spring.
Right.
But again, I passed on the efficiency instead of the cost. So
that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, because everybody always wants to pass on the cost, and I said, well, yeah, there's also efficiency, and I know it costs a lot of money to get that efficiency, but I just didn't. People are struggling enough, and what we do is not it's not a necessity. It is for fun. It is for some people. It is a necessity. Just it's a very relaxing thing to do. But anyway, that's kind of how I looked at it, and I'm hoping that things go back down, but we'll see.
I think there's bound to be a reset. I mean, prices, the real estate market here in Washington, and prices for certain things like brand new diesel trucks or Sprinter vans, some of the things I've been looking at, it's like, this is just funny money now. It's so overinflated that I mean, how can it sustain that level? Is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what's gonna happen, man. I tell you what, I'm just so glad I am no longer a home builder, because oh man, that would be very frustrating being a home builder in this economy, in this market.
Yeah. So we were talking about building rifles, and one of my goals is to get people into building rifles. Especially competitive shooters. Maybe they're an F-class shooter or a PRS shooter, and they don't want to wait or whatever. I don't think this is something we talked a whole lot about when I interviewed you last time, but what did you do to get started when you first started chambering? Was Speedy helping you?
So I'll give you a quick rundown. The very first lathe I bought was a mini lathe from Harbor Freight. And I started playing around with that thing, and that's kind of where I learned how to phase and how to turn and how to thread, and I mean, literally in that thing. And I was like, man, okay. It gave me enough confidence, because that's where I learned the basics. Mr. Pete on YouTube, I don't know if you know who that is, but Mr. Pete, I learned from that guy. And I said, okay, I would watch so many of his videos. That's why I like YouTube so much. That's why I decided to, pass on as much as I can, and I use YouTube, because it's helped me so much. So then I decided I'm going to look for a bigger lathe. And I was not looking for a lathe that I could chamber barrels in. I just wanted something bigger. And I ended up finding a really good lathe. It's a 14 by 30. It's so I could do barrels now. And I thought, well, now I can do barrels, right? And the main thing I was doing was tuners. That's my tuners. I just needed to.
Okay.
So I was doing tuners, I was facing, turning, boring, and ID, blind threading and all that. So I got really good at doing all that. And then I thought, well, I guess I could. I guess I'm gonna think about doing barrel work. But again, I'm a competitive shooter. I did not want my scores to take a hit while I'm trying to learn. I said, I can't afford to have that, right? Because there's no way I'm going to be as good starting out as the gunsmith that's doing my barrel work right now, that's been doing it for 30, 40 years, whatever. There's no way. And so, but I learned all the machining principles. And I said, before I even try to do a barrel, I'm going to call up Speedy and take a class. Sure enough, I called him up. He said, come on. I went up there, and he's like, all right, well, do you know how to phase it? I said, I know how to do all that. He goes, what about threading? I said, all that, I'm good. I said, I thread a lot because of my tuners. He's like, perfect. So I was there for 3 days, and we went through the firing control, and we went through everything. But I'd never chambered a barrel until after I took a class from him. Even though I had seen many videos, I saw Gordy's video. I saw many videos on chambering. And because I had seen a lot of videos on chambering, I may have seen Gordy's after Speedy. But anyway, when he was indicating the barrel, I saw a lot of people say, well, I get it within 2/10, and I get it within 2/10. And that seemed to be the norm. So when Speedy was indicating, I said, how close do you get it? 2/10? And he goes, 0. Like, why would it stop at 2/10? Well, duh, right? But that's just what I had heard. So many people kept saying that. And he's like, well, why would you stop at 2? No, you get it at 0. Because even if because, we're using those long stem indicators. They're not 10,000s, right? By the time you extend it. So he says, you need to get it as.
You double it, and it reads twice, or reads half what the actual run out is, right? Yeah, exactly.
So he says, no, you get it at 0 and as best to 0 and 0 wiggle as possible. And that's, you're just going to, and that for me, because I don't have to do a barrel in 2 hours. I don't care if it takes me all weekend, right? I just wanted it perfect.
Perfect. Yep.
And so anyway, Speedy, not only did he teach me how to do it perfect, he taught me how to do it efficiently.
So your experience is what I recommend to people. And because that was my experience. I had been running lathes on and off since the 80s with Grandpa in his garage. Is get really, really good at just the fundamentals of running the machine and threading for sure, And I started with just dials on a south bend, no DRO, nothing. It's good to know how to do that. It makes you really think about the backlash, in the cross slide and in the compound and all that kind of stuff. And you really want to get to that point where you know your machine to the point where you're super confident that you can do the threads, you can cut them to spec and all that. And then at that point, the chambering becomes, all right, here's some special consideration. It's almost specialty machining,
Right.
We're going to dial in a barrel. Well, that's a little bit of different thought process than just using a 4-jaw chuck and holding a cylinder of steel you're about to machine, and how to get your reamer held properly, depending on what type you want, and all the rest of that.
Yeah, that all changes, but not that much, right? And when we say learn how to thread, we don't mean like turn your tool post or your tool upside down and go from the shoulder out.
Right.
I mean towards the shoulder. If you are very confident doing that, now you can thread, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But yeah, blind hole machining is something that you just need to do. If you're gonna drill and pre-bore the chamber, and I did it with dials too. I didn't have DRO. Just everything was dials. That mini lathe didn't come with a DRO.
Right.
But to me, that was some of the best way to learn. I used to be a welder too, and people used to say, because I had a MIG welder. When I was welding in the shop, it was all MIG. And I'd see a lot of people say, I'm going to buy me a welder and I'm going to learn how to weld. I'm like, can you teach me how to weld? I said, okay, well, we're going to fire up the stick welder. They're like, no. I want to learn in that. I said, no, you're going to learn with the stick weld. If you're going to want me to teach you, we're going to teach you how to stick weld.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's where you learn how to weld. And then you can make it easier. But the fundamentals, you can't skip that process.
So in junior high, I did gas welding with oxyacetylene. We did stick welding, and we never did MIG welding. And later, when I got my own MIG welder, it was so easy. It was like complete cheating, But I like the gas welding too, because you can really see the change of state, with steel, especially as the color changes to each state, right. And then you see it flow together, and maybe you add a little bit of filler rod, or if you're brazing, doing that kind of thing. It's totally fun, but a lot of that, like kids nowadays in junior high, they might have some 3D printing, Down the street, we have a kind of an ag program because we're in kind of a farming area. So they get some of that good stuff, but it's probably, I'm guessing, mostly MIG welding,
Well, yeah, possibly. But I tell you what, if you got to start with stick welding. That's where it's at.
It's so funny to see people do it for the first time, and I remember it's constantly sticking to the work, or you're running out of rod and not moving in fast enough, and all the rest. It's a challenge.
You know what I would do when I would teach people? I've always, now that I think about it, I've always kind of had a good way to teach complicated things. I just realized that I would clamp a pen in the stinger, and then just make them draw circles on paper.
Nice.
Because that's the problem, right? Or I'd say, okay, drag this pen, but don't let it touch. Or even I think it all started with just to turn the machine off and grab it, and say just follow this line and don't touch the material.
Right.
Because that's the hard part, right? Maintaining that.
Yep.
That.
I was just doing that in my Cerakote shop the other day. I had my LPH 80 gun, and I noticed from watching one of my videos that my distance wasn't very consistent. So I was practicing in there, and it's like, okay, you got to really work on isolate, not even do it for real, but just look at what the parameters are, and then you're good to go.
And you always have to challenge yourself. Like I used to do a lot of left-hand welding, just because. And then when I started doing metal buildings, there was a lot of times where you're welding here, and then there's a wall, right, that you got to weld, and the slab may be 5 feet off the ground. And now to get to the other side, you got to go and get a scaffold, whatever, right? But if you can weld left-handed, you can hang over and weld that one, and then you hang over and you go on the other side of the column and then weld the other one. So I was very efficient, but you had to do it with both hands. And I did a lot of left-hand welding when I didn't have to practice for when I needed it. And it just made me super efficient. But
that's awesome.
You got to get uncomfortable, like David Goggins would say. Get uncomfortable. So back to your rifles. What's the lead time? That's a fun question.
The lead time. So I'm such a perfectionist. It's like I said, I've been waiting on the CO2 laser machine, and because I don't want to do them and not do them right. I already have the Pelican Vault cases. These really nice cases with the special latches and all that. But I don't want to just ship it to people in a cardboard box or do pull and pluck. I want to really finish it right. So right now our wait list total is at about 400 people, including gunsmithing jobs and complete rifles and that kind of thing. And I'm just doing this part-time to get started on the gunsmithing side. Like I said, I have
that's a long wait list already.
It is. So my goal is finish ramping up production and make sure that all of our services are well defined and well documented, customer worksheets and all this kind of stuff. It's been a real good learning process to figure out what someone else has to do to even establish whether or not a job is possible, But then when all of that is defined and when I've got production up to a certain level, I am looking for a really great machinist. Not necessarily a gunsmith even, but a machinist that I can teach to do this stuff because we're so laser focused on this, a lot of it is barrel work. So into 2023 Q1, we'll probably get the first 4 rifles done and get those off to customers and get our chambering ramped up. I've been doing mostly muzzle work just because a lot of people wanted my sporter barrel threading specialty stuff done. So trying to have fun with it. It's a lot to take on with all the other stuff, that we do, but it's a huge passion of mine. So I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. That's, for me, that's not my cup of tea. I don't, that's not something I want to pursue. So I'm glad you are. So when somebody calls me, I can just say, just call Gavin.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know. So you have these specialty rifles. So your plan is to build 10 or 15 or 5 or whatever of one. Are you going to have that type of thing where it's like, oh, this is our, I don't know, sheep rifle, and then is that the plan?
Yeah. So these first rifles are PRS style rifles, and we'll probably keep that as a SKU, if you will.
Oh, you got to give it dude. You got to give it a cool name, like that's I don't know, the barricade slaughter, or I don't know, something like that.
No, I'm with you. I was just talking with Seth Gardner from DM Targets. He's here locally, and he's going to actually shoot in the Pacific Northwest PRS community for us. And he has this stand, and it's called the Folding Multi-Use Stand. This thing is cool. It looks like a drone, like these little legs.
Yeah, but that's
fly
not
out.
a killer name, man. You don't.
No,
you don't
I
get
told him,
what
like,
I'm saying.
I said, name it the Barracuda. Name it.
There
name
you
it
go.
Anything that is like memorable. So I will take your advice, and we will come up with
That's a great
cool name.
Like, just there you go. You already have the name for your
Barracuda.
Rifles. We have the
Nice.
the you know, because it's a Barracuda, right?
Yeah.
PRS.
I'll call up Seth and say that the name is taken.
Sorry, buddy. You had your choice.
Yeah.
You had your chance. It's gone.
You snooze, you lose.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know.
Yep.
I think you need to have something pretty cool like that. Like, I don't know. To me, it needs to be fun, memorable, and people want to be proud of owning it. That's it. Accomplish those 3 and you got it.
No, that's good. But to further answer your question, that's one lineup, and these have polished barrels. The idea is that you could just swap barrels and not have to worry about Cerakote matching up and all that. Kind of the stuff you'd see at PRS matches. I do have a lot of interest in hunting rifles. So 300 PRC, 7 PRC, 6.5 PRC, and then on down the list. 25-06 and 308 and 30-06 and all that kind of stuff. So I'm scheming, and one of the challenges as a custom rifle builder is Reamers, which I'm going to use 40 Reamer Rentals for ones that we don't have in stock. Barrel blanks, stocks. Some of these stocks have crazy lead times.
Well, that's what I was asking about. Okay, let me back you up real quick about your 4D rentals. Why would you need to rent Reamers? Okay,
because
before you answer that, I'm going to give you one piece of advice in business. Okay?
Okay.
And this will make you successful. People are probably going to hate me. You can just blame me for this.
Okay.
You're going to have to get very comfortable at saying no.
Yes.
Okay, number 1. Okay, number 2.
Yep.
That's where the question with the 4D rentals comes in. Why would you need them? Why would you need to rent a Reamer? I guess is the question.
So my philosophy is we will stock Reamers for all of the configurations that we stand behind and for rifles that we specialize in and chamber on a regular basis. But if someone wants a, name an obscure 6.5 by 55 hunting rifle for whatever reason, and that's something that we're only going to plan on building one of in the next year, we'll just rent the Reamer and the gauges and get it as a set.
Yeah, well, I guess that's where I'm at. Like, why would you do something you don't do? It's like, yeah, we don't do 6.5 by 55s. Thank you. Bye. I don't know. It just adds.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tell me.
And you're the second person to tell me that gunsmithing is kind of a royal pain, and doing custom chambering for people is a royal pain. Craig Arnson from Area 419 told me that. They did a whole bunch of that, and they're doing less of it now, just because they have so many things that they specialize in, that they don't need to. They really don't need to. They have a huge business as it is. For me, I think it's really interesting to do something new, and it's great content for my channel. So I want to do, for instance, this 6.5 by 55 Swede versus 6.5 Creedmoor.
And
you guys have been telling me for years.
And that's fine. That's fine. Now, let me tell you how I would do it. Okay. You would tell the customer, I can do it good, fast, and cheap. Got to pick 2, right?
Yep.
I can do this specialized thing, but it's going to take a while because I have to order a Reamer. And then you order your Reamer. Yes, I know you're going to end up with tons of Reamers, but here's what scares me about renting Reamers. If you're doing one and never again, that's great. Rent a Reamer, right? But what if he's like, man, this thing's I love this thing. It's amazing, whatever. And they come back 3 years later and they say, hey, chamber me another one. Well, you're not gonna be able to rent the same reamer. You know what I mean? So in the name of consistency, if you want to do that, you'd have to buy a reamer. And then you'd probably have to have a premium on that, because that's not what you do. So you tell the customer, look, I'm going to split the reamer with you, right? You're going to have to split it, or they can buy their own reamer.
So I totally love where you're going with this. You know, we talked about Hummer barrels the last time we were talking.
Yeah.
And it's just the special alignment of the planets. And that 223 trainer I built on my channel is just one of those moments where it's like, could this be true? This is just the best thing ever. I want to be like the kid at the end of A Christmas Story, like with my 223 trainer, tuck the covers in, you know, just like, I love this thing, you know? That's how I feel about it. And if I didn't own that reamer, what would I do, right? Because I do. Dave Manson made that custom for me. 223 full bore, his own geometry. I'm like, you know what you're doing. Send me something good. And it turned out it really was, you know. But the problem with buying reamers, and this is something I'm trying to work with the industry on, multiple companies, is you can't. You know, in a timely manner.
Well, that's my point. That's why you have to tell the customer, look, this is going to be good, fast, and cheap. It's not going to be fast. We have to get a reamer, and there's two options. You can buy the reamer yourself and bring it to me, or if we buy the reamer, you pay half, right? That's the premium for having to do something extra special, and then but we can do it for you, and then you can, you know, everybody's happy, because then the alternative is to say no, we don't do that, which they're not going to be happy either, right? But if you have to go get a reamer just to do, because it's real simple. If you don't have a reamer, that means you don't do a lot of it.
Sure.
Which is the reason that you have to tell the customer, look, I'm going to split it with you, right?
Right.
And of course, you get to keep the reamer, right?
Of course, I also have another ulterior motive.
Okay, here we go.
So the first ulterior motive is it's great content. You know, hey, you know, we can film the process of doing this rifle. We could shoot a little bit. That's all good. But there are also a lot of corner cases that I am going to need to cover for this book. I think it's a book. I'm not sure yet, but a set of resources, you know. I haven't done a belted Magnum yet, right? And if I just want to go through the process once and do it for a customer, and it might be a non-critical caliber, like non-critical for accuracy.
Do a 7 Remington Magnum.
7 Rem Mag.
So George Gardner told me this, and I don't look into hunting cartridges at all, but he said the reason the 7 PRC is the size it is because it'll wipe out a 7 Remington Magnum chamber. Like if you can take a 7 Remington Magnum and run the 7 PRC and boom.
Like the 6 GT is to the 6 Dasher. Just go in there and clean things up a little bit. Yep.
And he said the 7 PRC is that size because of that reason. So you can do a 7 Magnum, Remington Magnum, it's belted. And then when you get done, you can always run a 7 PRC reamer in there. And that's more content. Right there. And that's more content.
Yep. No, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, but I'm listening to you. The specialty stuff, we're not going to be repairing Grandpa's shotgun. We're not going to do a lot of rifle work that we don't specialize in. And, you know, chambering is one of those things, and in-house reamers are going to get you the job fastest, and, you know, we know more about what we're going to deliver to you. The rental thing, to me, still makes sense, but we'll try for a while, you know, and see how it goes, see how customers react.
And I may be completely wrong. I think I was wrong once before. That's one time that I thought I was wrong. No,
nice.
Again, that's just my opinion, obviously, you know, but it's just based on my experience, it ends up with nobody being happy because let's say you rent a reamer, right? There's a cost associated with that. And I don't know, let's just say the reamer's bad, or the rifle's not ready, or you can't get it done, and now you got to send the reamer back, or this, that, or the other. It's just too many variables that happen when you don't have your own reamer. That's my, you know, and what ends up happening is now you're doing something that you really didn't want to do to begin with. I mean, it sounds like you do, but then the customer talks you into it, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to do the customer a favor. I'm going to do it. And typically those are the ones that end up biting you because something always goes wrong. And it just, like, I did one. And maybe this is, let me tell you why I'm so against it.
Sure. Yeah.
I did a 220 Swift. Chambered it, sent the reamer back, shot it, and the brass was too tight, right? And I'm like, because you rent a reamer, but you really don't know. And now what? Well, number one, you can't rent another reamer because it's like you don't know what you're gonna get. I think the chamber was too tight. It was getting clicker, so then I had to make dies. It was a reamer that just didn't work well.
Actually, that's a good point. Even for brand new reamers, is quality control is critical. And I've heard stories, I won't say about whose reamers, but like I ordered this and it wasn't what we thought it was going to be, and that wasn't what we thought it was going to be is a huge problem for the rifle builder, like you're saying.
Yeah, like for I've owned enough reamers. For example, I have a reamer that just shoots lights out. And then I'm like, I'm going to order a backup. Everything has tolerances, right?
Yep.
And it's very hard to get the exact same thing twice.
So let's talk about tolerances, actually. You know, we were talking about the neck turning machine that you use when I interviewed
The iDod, yeah.
The iDod, thank you, yes. And the AutoDod, right.
Yeah, the
I'm looking into that.
That thing looks really cool. Have you gotten to do you just order reamers with all the geometry on one that you want, or have you done separate neck area and separate throater?
No, I prefer to do it all at once. But I have done the zero freebore, and then I've done that. I prefer to just do it all at once.
Well, and you know what you want, right? You can spec it out.
Right.
I'm assuming you're going to do a dummy cartridge and you're going to look at where the donut area is or whatever parameters you want for case capacity and volume and all that. And
yeah, the main thing I take into account is obviously I want the bolt tail to be away from the donut area, or which is the shoulder neck junction. I want it to be above that, about 50 to 100 thousandths, depending on how long the neck is. Right.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
A bit forward.
But again, I'm single chambering. Single feeding, some of the things that I just take into account, right? Again, so depending on the neck.
Well, do you single feed for F class?
Yeah. You have to.
Okay.
It's in the rules.
Okay.
You have to single load.
I've never shot F class. This is a whole new world for me.
Yeah, but you have to. That's the rules. But for PRS, I don't. But I still like to. I like the long freebores. But yeah, like I said, 50 thousandths to 100, depending on the length of the neck. Like the 6BR, my 6BR is way out there because it's such a long neck, right? That's one consideration. Number two, I load it around. I measure the neck, and I like 5 to 6 thousandths clearance between the loaded round and the chamber.
Gotcha.
And that's about all. Once you have one, for example, 6 millimeter, once you know the freebore for a certain bullet, it goes with every rifle out there. Like every 6 millimeter, like 125 freebore, 150 thousandths, whatever. You can have a 6 Dasher, a 6 BR, a 6 GT, a 6 Creed, whatever. And you can just spec the exact same freebore because you know it's going to work, right?
Nice.
Now, that is going to... So the freebore is from the front of the case to the where the bullet engages the rifling, right? That's that dimension. So if you have, for example, a 6BR and you have a really long freebore, and then you say, I'm going to do that with a 6 Dasher. Well, all of a sudden, the neck on the Dasher is real short. So you might get into trouble there.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? But I guess what I'm getting at is, I guess it'd be the other way around. You wouldn't get in trouble being too far out because if it grips in the BR, it's going to grip the same in the 6 Dasher, right? it would be the other way around. For example, like you have it seated real deep in the BR. Let's say you have a really short freebore in the 6BR, and then you're like, this works perfect. I'm gonna do that in the dasher. Well, the dasher has a really short neck, so now you might be in the donut area. Right, so you would need a longer freebore. So it works one way, it doesn't work the other. But I use on my 6mm, I use 150 thousandths freeboard for everything. It's a long freeboard, but you can always jump it longer. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Yep. And when you hand load, obviously you're in control, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and you're gonna get really good at specking reamers because you're gonna figure out what works for you, and then it's gonna be a secret because you're gonna figure out something that's reamer specking is an art in itself, and it's something that a lot of reamer or gunsmiths don't want to talk about, like.
But this gets to a really important issue. When I talked about working with the reamer and tooling industry, I think part of what needs to happen is these really killer configs, your 6 dasher with 150 freebore, for example, or whatever, they get kind of documented and held up as great examples of what you want in a rifle like that. And then I think Alpha Munitions has done a good job with this. They make brass, they make reamers, and there's a reason that they make both of those, right? And you can order different freebores, and there's 2 different values you can pick from, a shorter jump and a longer jump. And they've done testing, and they've worked with shooters to determine what's going to work, and that's why they offer those configurations. One that I have thought about, I think you were hinting at it just a moment ago, the 0 freebore, is just get a reamer with the shorter freebore that is going to work, and then have a throater reamer, and then you can always punch it out if you need to. That way that pair of reamers can serve a bunch of different, configurations or needs.
Yeah, that's one way to go about it. For your purpose, it may be the best way. For my purpose, obviously, it's like I just want to shoot the same thing over and over and over and over again. So,
now, when you said 5 thou clearance between the brass and the chamber, which part of the chamber are you talking about there?
The neck.
The neck.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems loose to me.
I know. That's why I said it. And I said 5 to 6.
5 to 6. So how did you land at
that? Experience. So I'll tell you how I landed at that. It was by mistake. I had this rifle that shot really good, but I'd get these random flyers. Just couldn't get rid of them. One day I turned brass, and I turned it too thin. Didn't realize. And I measured it, and I thought, oh crap, I screwed up. Because I used to use the same neck turner for my 6.5 and my 7s and all that, and I changed the mandrel. Gotcha. There was a lot of, I turned them too thin, and I was like, well, now what? I said, well, I'm gonna go try it, and it shot great, and my flyers went away, and I thought, holy crap, and that was like 5 thousandths clearance, and so then I'm talking to Larry Bartholomew one day. He's F-class shooter, been doing it forever. Okay. He's one of the grandfathers of F-class, and he shoots for Team Berger. And one day I was telling him this story, and he goes, okay, you're on Team USA now, so now we're technically teammates. He goes, we run 6 thousandths.
Wow.
And now I don't know what everybody else does, but I know people are gravitating towards looser 5, 6, 7. I've heard all the way up to 10.
Wow.
Yeah. Because you don't want anything. Well, then I was talking to Jack Neary, and on the second video that I released about around New Year's, he talks about, he always says, turn thin to win. Because it gives you more neck clearance, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, this is something I'm going to have to experiment with then.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But that's like I said, that's my 5 to 6 thousandths. I usually shoot for 5, but 5 to 6 I'm okay with. That's usually how I spec out a reamer. And yeah, I'm surprised you didn't say anything the first go around, but it simmered for a while.
Yeah, I was just chewing on that a little bit. Because I have heard, you want it basically to fit super tight, and
That's what I used to hear, and that's why I had
Yeah.
mine really tight, and I just could never get it to just be happy. And then all of a sudden, I made that stupid mistake, which now I realize I'm glad it happened, and been happy ever since.
Awesome.
So you've heard about the 647 being a finicky cartridge.
Yes.
It made no sense to me. So,
Okay.
because the 6.5-47 shoots, the Dasher shoots, the 6 Creedmoor shoots, the XC shoots, the GT shoots, and I said, why wouldn't the 647 shoot? It's there's not enough difference there for it to not shoot.
Sure.
So I called up JGS and said, send me a Reamer print. They sent me a Reamer print. I look at it. The neck was 272. A loaded round was 270. And I'm like, I think that's the reason.
Is the 6.5 spec'd more?
Oh, yeah.
More clearance?
Oh, yeah.
Then?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. So I called them back. And the other thing and again, there's a million different prints floating around, but I told them, I said, the base, the body was also different than the 6.5-47. And I said, let's keep it simple. Change nothing on the body. We just took a regular 6.5-47 Reamer print. I said, don't change anything on the body. On the neck, go to 275, right? 270 loaded round, 5,000 clearance, 275, and 150 thousandths free bore. I have yet to chamber a finicky barrel with that Reamer.
This is really interesting because there are several features that will center things up, right? The body, the shoulder, the neck, and then also the free bore and the bullet itself interacting together. And one of the things that Hornady mentioned about the Creedmoors, the 6.5 Creedmoor, for instance, is tighter. I think it was 300 PRC compared to 300 Win Mag is what it is. Is tighter free bore to bullet clearance. So do you have any thoughts about that number?
I do. So how many barrels do you think you're going to do a year?
I don't know. I think we'll probably do 10 to 20 a month, something like that.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Why do you ask?
I'm just trying to change the subject when you ask me about that.
Oh, is this proprietary knowledge? Is this
It's not proprietary,
the secret sauce?
but it's something that we've been playing around with. Not just me. I found out some others and we're actually going the other way. We're going looser.
Okay. Interesting.
And I don't really want to talk about specific numbers because it's not 100% sure that it's working.
Sure.
But so far it's looking better to go looser
Gotcha.
rather than tighter. See, because the thing about tighter is everything has to be super consistent for it to work. When you go looser, now too loose is bad, but if
Sure.
you just got to give it room to breathe in a way, right? So I'm experimenting with looser pre-bore diameters.
Okay. So to me, there's two things. There's what needs to happen for the bullet to go on the same trajectory, shot after shot, and then there's what do you need to do to get that to happen, right? So I think of the bullet as either spinning perfectly around its center of mass, which should also be its geometric center. It's not wobbling like a football, even engraving of the rifling and all that, and having a consistent muzzle velocity, right? If it's shooting straight out of the barrel, it's not wobbling, same velocity. Seems like, all right, that's a consistent load.
So this goes back to the clearance between neck and chamber, right? I told you 5 because you want that when you pull that trigger and that explosion happens, or I guess that would be an implosion, right? You want that neck to get out of the way, all the way, completely, right? And you want that bullet to find its happy place. You don't want the brass to influence that, right? Well, same thing.
Happy place, yes.
Same thing with free bore diameter, right? Because it goes from there, and most of the time they sit in they sit in the free bore, right? That's where they sit.
Yep.
And typical custom reamer is half of 1,000th over bullet diameter, right? Well, have you ever measured bullets?
Yes, we've done tested stories, lots and lots of data on that.
Okay.
Actually.
So what have you found? Have you found any bullets over half a thou? Over?
So the SD on the diameter is typically within 2/10.
Okay.
The ES, I'd have to go and look. It's probably more like 5/10.
Right. So that's what I mean, right? So if you're going 5/10 and we know that the ES this is a place where ES matters, right? Well, if it's half a thou or 5/10 and your freeboard diameter is only that, then it's going to sit there and it's already going to be dragging, right? Well, there's no way that one's going to be, there's no way that one's going to go where all the others are going, right? So you want, again, this goes back to this is a clearance, free bore, not almost free bore. This is kind of the point I'm making here. So you got to go a little bigger. Now, we're still talking, I'm not talking go to 5,000s, but you still got to go just relax it a little more just so that that bullet has a chance to be in a free bore.
So how about throat angle? Because that's another factor that's going to influence how the bullet engages with the rifling.
Well, I mean, you can change everything, right? But just like you said, Reamers take a long time to get. And by the time you experience with all this, 1 degree 30 seems to be where everybody's happy, you know? Yeah, I'm sure you can test, but just like you said, you need a Reamer. It's going to take you 6 months or longer to get. Then you got to test it, right? And you can't just test it in one barrel because there's good barrels and bad barrels, right?
That's true.
So you got to do maybe 3, 4, 5 barrels.
Yep.
And then you got to burn them all out and document that. And then you have to, you can't just have one Reamer at, 1 degree 30 and whatever else you want to come up with. You need you need something to compare against. So there's 5 barrels here, there's 5 barrels. Now you're at 10 barrels plus 6 months. And that's only to see if it's going to work.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I do. And that's why I think it's so awesome to have access to some of the greatest people in the industry, like Jack Neary, right? Is to be able to pick their brain and to absorb what they've been experiencing and to compare notes and that kind of thing. Because I'm not looking to master everything, right? Like even the shooting aspects, why I shoot off of a bench rest. I want to test my ammo on the rifle and not as much myself. If I'm really testing a cartridge or a rifle that I built or whatever, I don't have the skills to win a PRS match. I'd have to spend a lot more time practicing and a lot more time shooting matches. I talked to guys, and the guys that were in the middle of the pack or the upper part of the pack here in the Pacific Northwest were shooting approximately 20 matches a year.
Yeah, you can't. There's no substitute for trigger time.
Yeah, and so you can't do everything. So
and if
so
you take the because let's just talk about the top 5 guys in the country, right? Any of those 5 guys are going to win at any time, right? So if you give one of those guys a slightly different Reamer configuration and he wins, well, he was bound to win with whatever anyway, So how do you actually gather this data, right? You'd have to gather. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm sure. Well, actually, I know for a fact. Like Alex Wheeler loves playing around with different Reamer configurations and all that, and that's the reason I shoot his Wheelers, which are secret. And like he's like, okay, here's the Reamer, but that's it. You don't know anything else about it. Like, don't ask questions. Okay. And they shoot amazing, and I'm like, and of course I'm gonna ask. Yeah. But that was already the deal. It's like, it's so people always ask me, what's a Wheeler? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And they think I just don't want to tell them, right? For the longest time, they just like, oh, you don't want to tell them. Well, I don't know what it is. It's a secret sauce and again, it's a Reamer that shoots just like I don't, obviously I don't have the ability to measure a reamer, within, because, 10,000ths or whatever, So, but I just know it freaking shoots really good. And I've used it for multiple barrels. So when I wanted to do my WIMP, that was the thing. I had to go to 284, and I've been shooting Shehane forever. And I said, hey, can you make this a Wheeler improved and just get it to a Shehane, but do your magic on it? You're like, sure. I said, what are we going to call it? I said, well, call it Wheeler improved. WIMP.
Nice.
So I called it 284 WIMP. So pretty much it's a Shehane with a Wheeler magic. And I don't know what it is, but it shoots great. But the Shehane shot great too, right? So I don't know if it's really making a difference. But makes me feel happy. Makes me feel good about it.
Yeah, it's the quest, right? What makes the difference, and
that's,
how to get there.
That's the same thing with the PRCW that I'm shooting, which is a 6.5 necked up to 7. Again, Alex Wheeler came up with that. He came up with my Reamer. I'm not claiming that he actually invented this, because what is there to invent, right? 6.5, run a mandrel in there, 7mm, right? But he came up with the Reamer that I have, so that's why I call it the PRCW. PRCW for Wheeler. That's it.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, you can go completely nuts with all these things. So it only takes time and money, man.
It does. It does. There's so many mysteries to look at too, like why some cartridges inherently shoot better than others. And you were talking about the 6x47 and how you saw on the Reamer print something that raised your eyebrow, right? I've wondered that, the 6-dasher. Why is this such a good?
Well, the 6BR, right? 6BR and all of its offspring, they shoot good.
Right. I got to build one of those this year. That's.
You don't have a 6BR?
I don't have a 6BR.
I can send you my Reamer. It is a tried and true.
Ooh.
And that's the other thing. When I talked to George Gardner, we discussed the 6x47, and he says, next time a customer wants one, I told him he could use my Reamer, because I want to see if they have the same results I've been having.
Nice.
But I tell you what, that 6BR Reamer that I have, and it's real simple. 5,000's over, I forget what it is, but 150,000's freeboard, and it just shoots it shoots.
Great. Who made the Reamer for you?
I think it's Manson or JGS.
Manson, okay.
I used to use JGS, and now I've been using Manson.
So give me the specs on that, because I could have one made too.
Okay.
I'd like to try that. That'd be good. It's not. I think you and I take some of this for granted, being able to shoot really well and really nice rifles and that kind of thing, and then for a lot of people, it seems like the unattainable goal or the unattainable dream, right? It might be their shooting, it might be their rifle, it might be their ammunition, So that's something else I want to do on my channel, is further document. So you want to get there, right? You might be on a lower budget, like your 6.5 needs more, kind of a thing. Or you might just want to say, I just want to spend $5,000 on a rifle, and how do I decide what to pick and what kind of shooting support do I need and accessories and reloading gear and all that. And some of the stuff really makes a huge difference, and then some of the other stuff you don't really need. Like I come back to the barrel and the bullet itself are really critical and make a big difference. Like I can take one bullet, shoot it in my dasher, and take another one and get completely different results.
3 Bs. Brass, barrels, and bullets.
Yes, it's the brass too. And I'm still honestly learning what factors with the brass make most of the difference, right? It takes a lot of data points and a lot of sample size and all this to sort through that, But I'll tell you, things like that 223 trainer, brand new Loplo brass, we loaded it with 77 OTMs, and
I've said this for a long time, and I just found out people are starting to quote me on it, but it's real simple. If the brass comes in a blue box and the bullets come in a yellow box, you're most of the way there.
Then we'll talk, right? Yeah. Yep.
But anyway, looks like you're enjoying your journey, man. I'm happy for you.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's fun to talk with people like you, and I'm looking forward to when we can shoot together.
Yeah, we need to do that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I'll let you get back to building some awesome boomsticks, and we'll do this again. I know.
Yeah.
This is not the end of the story. We're just gonna keep writing. We're just gonna keep sharing it, and I know people really appreciate. I appreciate this because I get to see the polished Gavin with a perfect vocabulary for all these, and I don't have that.
Boy.
I don't have that. Are you scripted? I'm just gonna ask the hard questions.
No, when we do videos, I have an idea of what I want to do. Like if it's a product overview, I'll read up on the product and all that, and then the closest to scripting we get is we use PowerPoint slide decks now and a laptop. And for me, and for even Guy Miner, who does hunting on our channel, it really helps us have better visuals we're looking at as we're presenting, and then just to help channel the discussion. But you're talking about a little phrases right on the
I don't know.
slide.
You just sound like you just nail every sentence like perfect, and you have all these big words to explain to perfection. Because that's why I don't do gear reviews, or I do very few. I'm like, this is a bottle. Like I suck at it, but I think I still get it across. I'm better at telling you why something works or why it works for me.
You tell people the straight scoop, and you speak from your own direct firsthand experience.
Yeah,
right.
That's
and
what I do.
The shooting reputation to back it up, right? And that's immeasurable. Like the value of that to people. Right, people are on a journey. It's about getting them up onto the path they need to get to, and getting them to their destination is not necessarily as quickly as possible, but along a route that's enjoyable, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
and
because you can pull your hair out when you're dealing with rifles, a lot.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I often tell them is a master reloader. We don't have a title for somebody who knows how to reload, but I'm going to call it a master reloader, or somebody who's really good at reloading. That doesn't mean that person can get every rifle to shoot quarter MOA.
Right.
A master reloader knows which rifles can do that. Mm-hmm. That's the difference.
Nice.
They don't spend time and effort and resources on a rifle that's just not going to do it. Like the Needmores.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we got about half MOA out of them. Guess what?
Yeah.
That's it. That's already exceeding my expectations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We're not going to, that's doesn't matter how good I am or Jason or whoever. They're not going to get them down to a quarter with those barrels. Right. Or with, could it be done? Possibly.
But consistently,
is it worth it? Yeah. Is it worth
not.
it? Well, the consistent part is the kicker.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
We
got a lot more to talk about. And let's take turns. So I'll have you back on my channel.
Okay.
And think about what you want to talk about next time.
Oh man. Here's the thing this podcast is doing. I'm just always talking to different people, and so I had Chris Long on the podcast. It hasn't aired yet, but you know who that is? Mm-mm. Optimal barrel time guy.
Oh, okay. I think I've heard of that, yeah.
Dude.
I'll have to check that out.
Dude, yeah. What's his name? I'm going to tell you. I don't want to butcher up his name, so let me look it up because he just emailed me. Jaden Quinlan from
oh, yeah. I know Jaden. Yeah.
He's going to be on because they have their small groups. They said that you need like really big samples of data to really. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna talk about that because obviously, I disagree to some degree, but I may be wrong. So I want to talk to him, and maybe he can change my mind. And even if he doesn't change my mind, I already know that I'm probably going to try what he's saying just to see, right? Because I'm looking for an advantage. Yeah. And if and that's something that's oftentimes people use against me. They go, "Why are you saying that? 5 years ago you were saying something different." I say, "Yeah, I'm learning just like you are."
That's right.
And
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm gonna have a talk with him. Brian Litz is gonna be on the podcast as well.
I saw that. Yeah, that's awesome.
So so you say, what are you working on? Man, now it's changing faster than ever, because every time I talk to these different people, I'm like, oh, I got to try that. I got to try that. And
Yep.
this just pumps me up, man. I'm just always trying to learn, and I love being proven wrong, because guess what? I have my own method, my own system that
Yep.
works really good. And for me to be proven wrong means I just learned something that
You're smarter now.
could, well, not only that, I'm a better shooter.
That's right.
So let's go. Let's go. Yeah, man, let me know. We can be on your channel whenever, and we need to get together and shoot for sure.
Super good. All right. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, man. Take care.
Yep.
See ya.
See you later.
Bye-bye.